have this session as part of the conference, raise awareness for bird, golden eagles, also try and establish the connectivity that this conference has talked a lot about, put it on par with the Denali Golden Eagle study that Carol McIntyre is doing in another national park, and then the birds of prey area along the Snake River, outside of Boise, another long-term golden eagle study site. Certainly this is far from that, but maybe a start. So those are some of the kind of connections we've been looking for. Does anybody have any questions that they've been holding for this time period for any of the speakers? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just knowing that golden eagle occasionally prey on prairie falcon nests. Does it also work the other way for prairie eagle occasionally prey on golden eagle?
You want me to answer that? Well, I don't know about preying on the young, but we do have several sites where peregrines have taken over a golden eagle site. You know, and really the threat is golden eagles killing peregrine young. I've seen some rather brutal interactions between the peregrines and the adult eagles. But, everybody hear that? Do I need to repeat it? Just a minute.
Yeah. And you guys want to add something to that?
I'll add a little bit to that. Just in the last 6 years of being in Yellowstone, I guess there's one good example. We've had a territory shift which has been a peregrine territory previous to me coming to Yellowstone, and is now and while I've been there, has had an active golden eagle, has been active with golden eagles, and is now once again a peregrine territory. The eagles are, I'm actually having a hard time figuring out. I see them, but I'm having a hard time figuring out where they are. And as I gave an example earlier of this site that Bob had located in the late 70s, 80s, is now a peregrine territory where they had golden eagles nesting at that time period. So, I mean, it's definitely, they shift with each other, but predation, I don't think, occurs on that level.
We had another question right here. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about you mentioned 78% of the mortality is human caused mortality. I was curious what the group sense is specifically lead as a issue in that. I guess I will say, I thought I read a paper a few years back, by the Fish and Wildlife Service, a national paper on eagle mortality. And I thought I remembered that lead caused mortality in Western populations. I think this was combined ball and bulls. It was as high as 25%. Maybe I'm misremembering, but that's the number that stuck in my head. And so that's a pretty high number. And I'm just curious the group sense of lead specifically as an issue for this population, for the Wyoming population.
Yeah, it's I'll start. It's site specific to an extent. It also affects migratory eagles in a different way than resident eagles necessarily because of where the eagles actually move. I know that we've been collecting blood from several of our nestlings to determine what the rate there is. Ours in the Bighorn Basin is a little bit lower than, for example, Southwest. Well, in Utah is one of the highest now, and Brian Bedrosian's in the audience too. He might be able to help something because he's done some of that work as well. But one of the things that's cropped up over the last several years is the recreational sport of ground squirrel shooting in some areas. Utah is one. I don't want to just pick on Utah, but I mean these are tours, vehicles specially outfitted to take folks out, shoot ground squirrels. They're often left in place, and of course it's a great feast for golden eagles, but unfortunately a feast of lead too. So it is very high in some areas, not so much in others, just like everything else. And again, that's why it's important to get this broad landscape view of what's going on in different areas. Because one remedy, if we're going to mitigate losses down the road or maintain and conserve a population, need to look at it not just even Greater Yellowstone, but continent.
Yeah, can you guys hear me if I don't use this? Yeah, I guess I would just add to that. What's that?
You look good.
Yeah. It certainly is an issue, and I think truck yellow is But, you know, it's one of many, and there's a lot of other things that we need to look at when we think about, you know, golden eagle protections, including, I think that the paper you're referring to was probably from the folks out in Madison, and they actually found that, you know, bald eagles, at least found bald eagles, had higher contamination or cause of death than golden eagles. But, you know, when you think about like migrants, for instance, migrating through Canada, those birds aren't being found. So I guess to me, broadly, yeah, it's definitely an issue, but I think it's one of many issues that we need to look at.
Great, thank you guys. Any other questions? We have a few minutes, sure.
Yes, in regards to citizen science, I was just curious as to what the citizens, how they're participating in these studies.
Yeah, and are you guys involved with citizen science? Well, what we do in our group, initially, we haven't even advertised, where we have more volunteers when they hear about the project or they attend maybe a field trip that I lead on something else, they hear about it. And so we haven't recruited a lot, I haven't needed to, and we have a waiting list. We usually take about 15 to 16 a year, and we pair them up, 16 especially, we'll pair them up. Otherwise, we may have a team of 3. But we go through a training session with all of them, go through, take them out to the sites, and for all of them. And then an in-lab session, we also go over with them the results from the last few years of what we've been doing, so they get a sense of what data we're collecting. Then we go through how to collect the data, and they have very specific jobs. So it's not just go out and monitor. We have monitor for a certain amount of time in this particular area, in this way, this distance from the nest. And so training is really critical, but it's well worth it. And we're able to monitor so many more nests on in territories on a budget than we would ever be able to do otherwise. One of the great benefits of that, I think, is having then members of the community, and again, from many walks of life, that are infiltrated in that community and talk to other people about this project. And people who I would never expect to be even interested in eagles, much less care about eagles, are coming to me and saying, wow, I heard about this, what are you doing? And get a lot of questions. So it's nice to go through a community that way. And I think that's part of what even Gary was talking about in terms of I don't know if he used the word infiltrate, but infiltrating this ethic or this consciousness, at least visibility on the species.
Any other comments on that? Citizen science? Yeah, thank you.
What's the connectivity between these 3 different breeding populations? And are these like resident breeding populations, or are they like, the birds come in and they're...
I'll start. I want Bob especially, all of us can.
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah, so the question was, what is the connectivity that we know about among these 3 populations and maybe more broadly in there? We don't know. We don't have clear evidence that there's movement from one to the other. We can do kinship analysis and do some other things to try to determine that down the road. My sense is, from what we're seeing, we have a few transmitted birds that, fledglings at least, that have gone, they're up in Ross's study site part of the year. We haven't seen any on the Yellowstone Plateau directly, but those birds are coming back, and most golden eagles tend to nest within 30 miles of their natal or hatching nest, and so we don't know if there's going to be that sort of movement, genetic movement there. That's something certainly we can test. I think the broader issue, and we've talked about source sync, and I don't think there's no evidence to support that kind of thing. It's an interesting concept of how these 3 share the area. But that's something we want to look at in terms of just connectivity in general and how one population relates to the other. I think the broader benefit of what we're seeing so far is recognizing how different these environments are and how, again, if we look long-term in terms of conservation and mitigation, that one recipe won't fit all areas, even within the greater Yellowstone.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a fundamental research need that needs to happen with this. What is the connectivity? We don't have it. And really, there are no data available to say what is a population and what is not, and what is connectivity and what is not. What we do know is Yellowstone is an incredible magnet area for a lot of raptors. We learned a lot on bald eagles, both non-breeders and failed breeders from as far away as Arizona using Yellowstone Park. It's a valuable piece of habitat, and it remains to be documented, just what the connectivity is and where you draw the line for population. That's a fundamental research question that needs to happen.
Any other questions? I have one, I guess. We have a little bit of time left, but in Dave's talk, he talked about the importance of prey and precipitation. The next three talks talk briefly about prey. Do one of you three want to speak to the importance of springtime precipitation? That seems to be very important in Yellowstone.
Yeah, Karen Steenhoff and colleagues have shown a relationship with both prey and weather in golden eagle productivity. This was in southwestern Idaho. I think both factors play into it. I think generally, if you have really, and I won't define what this is at this point, but really bad weather conditions, that certainly impacts what's going on. I think that the prey is the real driver, but extreme weather conditions certainly have an effect. I think that was really important to point out. We've got the weather data, and actually we just haven't analyzed it. The relationship between prey is so clean, but we're about to throw that into a multiple regression analysis.
I kind of displayed a relationship of amount of precipitation to failures and showed that fairly tight correlation with still more data necessary. But another part of what I saw, which I didn't present, was I looked at temperature, and what was funny was the colder it was, the better they did, and the warmer it was, the worse they did. And so that led me to believe that it wasn't exactly it was precipitation in the form of rain more likely than the form of snow. And I guess what I'm getting at is that potentially is a change that has more commonly occurred, especially in Yellowstone, which has traditionally been a very cold, had very much had a cold climate. So that's one thing I wanted to add about that.
Bob Ross, do you have any comments on that? Or?
We've tested a variety of weather-related variables, and none of them had any support. So, with more years of data, we'll see some more interesting things come out of it. But as of now, yeah.
And the data that are available, that in those analyses that show weather as a interactive factor, is a fairly complex suite of weather variables. It's not just one, not just precipitation or heat. It's a series of variables, including snowpack at a certain time of the year and hot bulb temperature. And it's fairly complex, but I think that weather certainly plays a role to some extent.
Parting comment, Bob? Do you have a parting comment on the effect of weather?
Well, it's important. It's hard to, just like Chuck said, it's hard to tease it out. And it's once you get a correlation, it's easy to say, yeah, it's the weather that's doing it, but it might not be.
With that, we'll finish. Thank you for everybody's attendance. We appreciate it. We have another round of applause for all four.